Hello and welcome to Charles Kelly Money Tips. This is Money Tips, bringing you money tips to help you save, earn, invest, accumulate and enjoy more money. My name is Charles Kelly. I've been a property investor for many years, and I've also written a book about money called Yes, Money Can Buy You Happiness. And I think property is one of those things that a lot of people are investing in as in shares as well. So what I've got is some important news for property landlords, tenants and investors. Hi to everyone coming in on Facebook Live. Hi there, I'll just give you a little wave there. Now, what I wanted to talk about is the abolition or the proposed scrapping of Section 21 no-fault evictions. Now what this means is that currently a landlord can serve a Section 21 notice on a tenant and ask them to leave after a certain period, and you don't have to have a reason for that. It's called a no-fault eviction, a bit like a no-fault divorce, I suppose. But the last Conservative government, the last Theresa May government, introduced measures to protect tenants and give them more security, and one of the things they wanted to do was to scrap this Section 21 of the 1988 Housing Act, and take that away, so that if a landlord wants to evict a tenant, they have to go through what's called a Section 8, which is a longer process and usually involves things like arrears or other problems that might be going on. So I don't know how this is really going to work in the long run, and how this is going to pan out, because clearly there are situations when a landlord may just want the property back, maybe they want to move back into it, and they shouldn't have to find a fault in order to ask for their property back. There's also situations where a tenancy agreement comes to an end, and sometimes the tenant, well, I'm not moving, and then you have to start going down this route of Section 21, because some tenants will not move unless they've received a Section 21 notice. Now, This, as I said, this was introduced, not implemented, but the measures were discussed and put down in a bill towards the end of the Theresa May government. Now Theresa May's gone, and we now have the new government, and we've had an election, so the Conservatives now have a majority. And what's happened is they had a second Queen's speech in December, and they are carrying on with this legislation. It's not going to be stopped. And they've introduced it now in the form of a renters reform bill, which, I mean, the three main things I can talk about here are the scrapping of the Section 21 no-fault eviction process, and perhaps lobbyists have been asking them to if they're going to scrap Section 21 to improve the situation with Section 8, to amend that so that, there's still some way of getting your property back as a landlord without having to go down Section 8, which is a more blunt instrument and usually involves going to court. It can take 5-6 months, so it's not going to be very good news for landlords if they want their property back for any reason, or that the tenancy's just come to an end and the tenant will not move. So that's the first thing. The second thing is they're going to have a database of rogue landlords, or they want to set up some form of database of rogue landlords, so tenants can see if their landlords are on this rogue landlord list. Now, I don't think there's going to be a rogue tenant list, but I think a lot of landlords would like to see a rogue tenant list, because there are tenants, a small minority of tenants who just go around, don't pay rent, trash properties, move on to the next one, and seem to get away with it, because it's very difficult to chase after someone, particularly if you don't know where they're going, or and you haven't got any, and they're just very transient and they haven't got much money anyway. Landlords are always constantly left out of, I would say always, but constantly left out of pocket when they're involved with any form of dispute with a tenant, or a tenant just decides to walk away. But anyway, this is all designed to be seen to protect tenants and give them more security. And then there's something called a lifetime deposit scheme, which will mean that tenants will not have to keep saving for a deposit, which sounds a very good idea. That's often a big deal for tenants. Now, of course, we've had the Tenants Act this year, which abolished charging tenants for setting up tenancies, for doing references and that sort of thing. And of course that's been passed on again to the landlord. So all of this is not good news for landlords. It might be good news for tenants, but it will not be good news if landlords just decide that, that it's not worth getting involved in renting properties anymore. And they'll say, well, let's leave it to the corporates. I'm getting out of this. I'm going to retire. Because that's what a lot of landlords are doing. Only today I heard about a property being sold by landlords who's just fed up. And, not particularly, he hasn't had any bad experiences, but he's just fed up with this new legislation coming in, possible tighter legislation coming in, and the tax situation where he will be paying more tax through no fault of his own. They're just increasing the taxes and reducing tax relief on interest charges. So this is why I think a lot of properties will come on the market from landlords who've probably just had enough. So that's what I'm trying to say to landlords. I know that you've probably heard this before, but what I'm also pointing out is that this is not going away. The government do intend to push this through, and in a different form, but it might be amended in some way. I know the National Landlords Association and other groups have been lobbying the government to say, look, we need some sense here. We need a sensible arrangement where it's a win-win for both, not win-lose. Because if you remember in the past, when they brought in tough legislation in the 60s, then landlords said, well, we're not going to let anymore. And it just, there was not a vibrant buy-to-let market. And letting properties to individuals as a landlord became very difficult because people could get a protected tenancy and stay there for the rest of their life at a fixed rent. So that clearly was not very good for investors. In those days, though, there was a mass public housing building campaign going on, or mass program of building thousands and thousands of council houses all over the country. So that housed people. But I don't see that happening now. The government is still very reliant on the private sector to build properties, to provide affordable homes. So you've got to work in partnership with the private sector, or decide, well, the councils and the government are going to build thousands of houses again, which I can't see happening at the moment, but it is needed. The other thing I just want to mention, I might go into this in more detail in another episode, is that for years now we've had this absurd leasehold pricing system for extending leases. I think personally leaseholds is not a good system. We're one of the few countries that have leasehold and freehold, and to me leasehold is a bit of a con, if you want to put it bluntly. In this country where you buy most flats on a leasehold, you don't own the flat outright, you just own the right to stay there for a given length of time. So it could be a 90-year lease, a 95-year lease, 125 years, or it could be a 999-year lease, which is a virtual freehold, but you don't own the land. And there are many landlords that have held freeholds for hundreds of years now. Think of the Duke of Westminster, the Earl of Cadogan, and lots of families that own properties in the West End of London that have owned these properties for centuries, and all they give out is leases. So you look at Belgravia, all those nice properties, they're all on leaseholds, and they're owned by one of the richest men in the country, the Duke of Westminster. And this has been passed down to various Dukes of Westminsters for hundreds of years, and they plan for the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren. They're planning that far ahead. They're not just planning for themselves. They've got enough money, but they want to make sure their great-grandchildren and future generations keep this money. So that's one end of leaseholds. But the other end of leasehold is just somebody buys a flat, say a 99-year lease, and then it goes on, and eventually they get to a point below 80 years on a lease, which is a critical period, and it becomes very expensive for them to extend that lease. And this is because of a thing called marriage value, and it's just a system where they can charge more than they would charge for extending the lease had it been extended under a statutory agreement, a statutory right, before it reached 80 years. So if you're in a leasehold property and your lease is nearing the 80-year period, you need to start thinking about extending that lease before it drops below 80 years, because then it becomes very, very expensive. and difficult, because then you don't have that automatic statutory right to just serve notice and extend it in that way. Now, your solicitor can advise you on this, but you still have to pay for it one way or the other, but you will pay a lot more if it goes below 80 years, because you're more or less at the mercy of the landlord or the freeholder, although you can go to arbitration and tribunals. Now, this can affect a lot of people in council properties or ex-council properties that bought their flat from the council at the start of the right to buy scheme, which was in the early 80s. Now, the BBC have found out that there'll be thousands of people coming to a period where their leases are nearing 80 years who have bought council properties. And apparently councils have raised £27 million on just lease extensions in the last year. Sorry, not in the last year, in total. So these are people extending their leases. They've raised £27 million from councils. An example here, a leaseholder in the London Lambeth Council District, which is in central London, Brixton, Stockwell, paid £570,000 for a lease extension. Somebody in Camden with a 38-year lease had to pay £209,000 to extend that. And a 45-year lease in the City of London attracted a £182,000 payment to extend it back to a normal kind of lease. Now, obviously, once you've done that, the property is worth a lot more. So if somebody's paid £570,000 to extend a lease, the flat at that point was probably only worth, £50,000, for example. Now it's worth £600,000 or £700,000. There are a lot of flats with very short leases that are not worthless, but not worth very much. And if you buy those and then you extend them, you potentially can make money, because then the property becomes a worthwhile property on the open market. So the reason I've mentioned this now is that the Law Commission have been looking into this, but that the processes they've come out with are not going to help much, but they do intend to abolish what's called a marriage value, and leaseholders would then pay a reduced fee called a hope value. Some hope. I don't know what this means. It's all a bit vague at the moment, but the process, the reform hasn't gone far enough for most people, in particular the people in the Leasehold Knowledge Partnership, which is a charity that helps leaseholders. So we'll have to wait and see how that goes. But clearly this is of interest if you're a freeholder and a landlord. You want the most for your leasehold extensions. If you're a tenant or a leaseholder, you want to pay the least. But it is a bit of a mess at the moment. I think the whole of leaseholds are very difficult. If you own a leasehold flat, your freeholder has got quite a lot of control over you. They can insist on repairs to the outside of the building. They can affect, if you don't pay certain charges like ground rents and that sort of thing. You can have your lease revoked even if you're an absent owner and you didn't know what was going on. I've had disputes with landlords and freeholders. Some of them I would call rogue, because they've tried to overcharge all of the flat owners in the building for doing outside work that was just ridiculous, and they want to keep increasing management fees and that sort of thing for doing virtually nothing. So a typical management fee could be, for a normal flat, £100 a month, £200 a month. And for that, they don't do anything. They just so-called manage the property. And then if you want to do any work, they say, well, this is going to cost X amount on top of that. And the management fee really covers their administration and profit. So for that reason, I don't like leases. I don't like buying leaseholds. But if we have proper reforms coming in, then you may see an improved system. A lot of new properties have what the government has looked at as very unfair leases. They have leases with very high ground rents, sometimes £200, £300, £400 a year, which is ridiculous. A ground rent for the ground that you've got your property on, having already paid for it in terms of buying a long lease. And then the management charges can be very high, and these ground rents can go up very rapidly. Old ground rents used to be like £50 a year, going up every 30 or 40 years. but you've got these new ground rents that are going up every few years, so they can almost make the flats worthless in a few years' time. So these are very unscrupulous builders of new properties in various parts of the country, and a lot of people have bought properties which have got very poor leases, high charges, high ground rents. So just watch out for that. If you're buying a new property, the agent will send you details. This property is on the market for £250,000, and you say, well, how long is the lease? Oh, I'll find that out. And what are the charges? Oh, I don't know. I'll have to go and find out what the management fees are, management charges, and how much is the ground rent. They don't give you this stuff. They send you out all these information, but if you've got a property worth £250,000, you don't know if that property's got a 2-year lease or a 100-year lease. You don't know if it's got management charges of £1,000 a year or £10,000 a year. And there are properties in London with £15,000 a year management charges, because they've got lifts, they've got porters, they've got gyms, they've got swimming pools. All these things have to be paid for. So just be very careful when you're buying any leasehold property to look at the finer details, especially new properties where the charges can be very high. The ideal situation if you're buying a flat, say a converted house, is that you get a share of the freehold and you're managing it yourself, or the freeholders have appointed their own management company so they can get rid of that management company if they're not doing a very good job. Otherwise, I wouldn't buy leasehold properties unless it's a share of the freehold. So that's all for now. That was the news for landlords, property investors and tenants. Thanks for listening. This is Charles Kelly bringing you money tips to help you save, earn, invest, accumulate and enjoy more money. If you want to know more about property and you want to become an investor, drop me a line, because I can give you details of a very useful free course that will give you an overview of investing in property. So you can go along for a day and get a taster of various types of investing property strategies, which could be buy to let, it could be HMOs, houses of multiple occupation, it could be buy to flip, it could be no money down techniques where you buy properties, you buy on options and this sort of thing. So if you'd like to know more about that and you want to know how to get into property and become an investor, rather than just going out and putting all your money into one property, take some courses, get some education in property, even if it's only a one-day taster free course, and it will get you thinking and get you started. So drop me a line at charles@charleskelly.net or here on Messenger, on Facebook, or whatever, and get yourself educated before you leap in with both feet and put all your money into one property, which may or may not be the right thing for you. So thanks for listening and have a good evening.